G'day YouTube, welcome back to my channel Bonsai Works. I'm David. Today we're going to discuss Japanese maples and what you need to do, especially with any kind of Japanese maple really, especially if you're working on them, developing them. You can do this with young trees, older trees, bigger trees, more refined trees. You can really do a lot of these techniques on all Japanese maples. So now it's timing. So at the moment, this tree, it's come to me to look after from a customer. It's actually quite a big tree, quite nice size, a nice trunk, starting to get the white bark, which old Japanese maples do. It's a standard Japanese maple, no special variety. It's just that it's been a little bit unkept and hasn't really had enough time to be looked after. So the person doesn't have enough time to look after it. So it's come to me to really look after and get it at least coming back to something good. But Japanese maples this time of year, which is late spring, so it's late spring here in Melbourne, starting to warm up as well. So today's a 30-degree day, degrees Celsius, that is 30 degrees Celsius day. So it's really starting to warm up now. But it's an odd one day here, one day there with 30 degrees. So all the growth's kind of hardened off. We still get shoots, but it's not as crazy growth as it was early spring. So that's the important bit. Now, what do we do? Look, this tree is pretty cool tree, but it's just overgrown. There's like long branches on this tree, really long stuff. You can't really see the trunk. It's a nice straight trunk, and then it forks off into two. And some of the branches are starting to do the upward movement, which I do like seeing in Japanese maples and deciduous trees in general. There's a little bit of leaf burn, which suggests not enough water, things like that. So my job is to get this tree back into health, back into shape, and also really start to redesign some of it as well. So we can do, even though this is an advanced tree, you can do these similar techniques on young material, especially if you want to develop the pads and foliage and branching and have what's called the ramification of the tree. So let's start working through this tree, and I'll show you the issues and what we can deal with. So kind of the first thing I want to talk about is all this long growth that we're experiencing on this tree. You really need to go through the tree and start to cut back into the shape you want. Okay, so out here, you'll see it's coming out quite a bit. Now, I'll come in with the camera to show you a little bit more detail what's happening. You can see the branch coming out, and we're getting lots of long growth, you know. I mean, ultimately, that branch is a bit of a mess. So we really need to start to think about how we're going to design these branches. Even though I want more upward growth naturally, this is how the trees come to me. Let's try and attack this tree and get it back looking in some sort of relevant shape. So, for example, I'll highlight this branch here. So you see it's quite long, and we want to get it back at least most of the foliage back to about this line, not all this out. Because what we want is there's not much back budding at the moment. There's not much back budding in there. You can see he's lost a few branches on this tree. There's a big one lost in the back there as well. So really need to think about getting the sunlight into this tree, getting it healthy, and getting it growing. So what I tend to do, so for example, this branch, bear with me while I try and hold and cut with one hand. So this branch, I'm going to cut it back to the first pair. Would have been the first pair. That's that bit. Where is it? I lost it. I cut it off. But there's one branch. There's one leaf there. A lot of this doesn't look that healthy. So let's pretty much cut it back to the one pair there, or that first one there. Let's cut this back to. Let's see where this one ends up being. So let's try the camera this way. The first pair is there. So cut back to the first pair in all the tree. So that's what I would go about, trying to get this tree healthy again and trying to get it to look good. Now, sometimes you get branches like that. There's nothing, absolutely nothing there. So look for the bud. There's a bud there. So I'm going to cut it just short of the bud. So that bit dies back and the bud will open there. Okay. So very quick, easy way to get at least some sort of health in the branch. So again, cut back to the first pair. Cut back to the first pair. Now you've got to do it through the whole tree. So I just want to show you that quick technique so you can start doing it especially if you've got a tree like this, even young material, you've got to do that to the young trees as well. Cut back to the first pair, especially if you want to get good ramification in the branches. So I'm going to go through this whole tree and cut it all back to at least the first pair. If it needs a longer branch, if the branch is a bit longer, I won't cut it back to the, if the branch is short, sorry, I won't go back to the first pair, probably the second pair. But for example, these really long ones, see, there's the first pair here. See that first pair? So I'm just going to cut that off, okay? Very straightforward. Cut that off, cut that off, cut on this big branch, cut that off. And look at the nice branches start to form. You come back to structure. See how nice the branch is? Even though the leaves aren't healthy, eventually they'll get replaced and then a better branching will happen. So that's what I'm going to do throughout the whole tree. So you can see after all that just cleaning up, you kind of see the structure a bit better. And actually can see it's actually not a bad looking natural maple now. It actually looks pretty cool as a natural looking maple. A lot of these branches are moving up, moving up, moving up. It's quite nice. These ones are a little bit horizontal, but I think it's just about a time now really getting this tree a bit more fuller in foliage. Now, there's a few issues where there's not much in this area here because there's no branching. Not much we can do. I haven't made any design decisions just yet with this tree, and now that's this step. Now we go about designing this tree and getting it looking good. So let's have a look at some of the changes I want to make to this tree. Okay, the first change I want to make is slightly tilting the tree up from that end, because this main trunk was very straight before, and this one was off to the side. Now this trunk is slightly to the left. That one's a bit more to the right, and it kind of balances the tree now when you look at it from a trunk perspective, not branches. So that's the first change I want to really make, just a slight adjustment in pot angle because the trunk isn't as well. The main trunk is very straight, and the other sub trunk was a bit too leaning over. So now it's coming a bit more centralized. It looks a lot nicer now. There's a bit more balance in the tree, so that's the first change I'd like to make. Alright, the next subtle change I made was I moved this branch away from blocking the trunk. So now we can actually see up until about here. Before you couldn't really see that bit of the trunk, which is a nice bit. And now it's actually a bit more open and you can actually see the trunk just by slightly moving that branch away. I just use the guide wire to do that. So that's the next phase. So you slowly go through the tree in that sense. So you work your way up and go through the tree. I guess the next phase for me is to just reduce some of the heaviness of the tree. And sometimes you can see branches that are just getting really out of shape. So if you look this way, there's a branch here, very heavy and kind of too much, and there's another very heavy one. And if this is my front of the tree, these are very heavy pointing at you, and I can't see the beautiful trunk that's in the back. So I'm just going to reduce a little bit of this tree. Just a little bit of the heaviness. It doesn't need that length as well. It's quite long now. Now these are other ones down. There's branches over here that are very long and heavy. So I'm going to be reducing them as well. There's this branch up here, this here. I think it was being built to fill in this gap. Unfortunately, there's not much we can do with that hugeness. So we just got to come back and let this branch fill in, and maybe hopefully that will fill that spot. And there's some other side branches that are coming in as well. So just by eliminating some of the heavy stuff, I'm able to rebuild some of the tree back to a bit more, give a bit more taper, I guess, in the big scheme of things. Tapering of the tree a bit better. Now there is this big heavy branch in here that I want to eliminate. I'll take that out. So it's not so eye-poking anymore. Some of these branches are too long. So now it's just, gradually going through, eliminating heavy things that are never going to be used properly in the design. Now, there's a lot of stuff at the top, but I've really cut that back quite heavily, which is good. Hopefully it gives a bit more openness so the branches can keep growing and keep getting stronger. Now, come back and see how the tree is starting to look a bit more open a bit. But you can see now the faults. Probably there's a branch missing in here that we need. There's a bit of too much heaviness in this section here, so we've got to start to think about eliminating some of these branches. And you've got to get that taper, more taper. Like you can't have wider branches here and shorter branches here, so getting taper back in the tree. All right, so the tree's starting to look a little better. Now, there's not much more we can do in terms of chopping huge amounts off, because I've chopped a lot of the stuff that I needed to get rid of. Maybe a bit of refining in this area. Now we need to build the tree back up. So I've pretty much, I think I've cut enough off. I think there's quite a bit gone. Now, I tend not to wire maples as much as I used to, but I'm going to look at structurally if I need to change anything. But that's the next step. Now look if you want to wire anything. Most likely, you're probably going to use guide wires more than anything on this, because the branches are starting to get a bit older and a bit more heavier. So it's really hard to move them just by putting wire on the tree and trying to bend them. So it's more of a, just use guide wires, see if you can pull them to somewhere else, a stronger branch, and hopefully it works. But all in all, that's the kind of work that you can do. I heavily reduced this tree, and I'm still going to do some more, but you can see how much improvement structurally you can see now on the tree. There are a lot of areas that have got issues, but I think we can fix them in time. Got to keep now the tree up here in control. I don't want huge shoots going everywhere. I want a nice healthy canopy. And you see, if you can imagine, this is going to be nice and rounded, like a maple in nature, not a pointy stick sticking up, you know, one branch. It's a nice rounded apex. All these branches are going nicely up in this direction. So I'm pretty happy with that. So these ones are a little bit flat, but I think we can live with that. At least they're coming upwards a bit, but all these ones are nice in the nice direction. Missing branch here, missing branch in there. Maybe feature approach graphs or thread graphs, something like that we could think about doing. But you never know. I've cut the tree back heavily. I could get a bud shooting anywhere along the trunk as well. This tree still has enough green on it, I guess, so you can get some sort of back budding. But even a side branch could grow in here, fill in the gap as well. But I think it's quite good. The back is a little bit heavy still. I think in time, I want to reduce this side a bit more. Maybe I'll do it now, actually. It's just too heavy. There's just too much heavy branches. So just heavy branches. And I think it's fine to do now. Nothing's bleeding. So when the sap flows too much and it's very early spring, the cuts actually start weeping sap so much, and it's very bad for the tree. But at this time of year, there's nothing, no sap at all bleeding. So it's really slowed down, which is good news. So by slowing down a little bit, it's just going to grow just slowly, not like explosive growth that you get for spring. So that's the other good thing. So you can really use this technique on anything you're growing in terms of trees. Don't use it on, obviously, your show trees, you know, like your display trees. You don't want to be doing this to your display trees. But anything that's growing and you need to fix, or young trees, young seedlings, young maples, you can do this with young maples or trees that you're trying to fix up, like in this case, this tree. So almost come back to a good starting point and work with the tree. So let's take a step back. Overall, that's a bit more a better angle there, you can see. Now you can see the faults in the tree, the missing branches, especially in this area here. There's a huge gap in here, and you probably just see the huge gap in here. It's pretty obvious now once I get the brown camera at eye level. Anyway, guys, there you go. Working on Japanese maples and what you need to do, from young material, young seedlings, up until advanced trees that you really got to cut back and get looking good again. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you back for more.